You just had a conversation, and now you're playing it back in your head for the 10th time. What did they really mean by that tone? Was that thing you said okay? Should you have said something different? The questions multiply, branching out into a forest of doubt. Suddenly, you're not just replaying a 2-minute chat, you're auditing your entire personality. If that sounds familiar, you've probably wondered, is all this analysis a sign of high emotional intelligence, or are you just stuck in a destructive overthinking spiral? We're told to be self-aware and empathetic, key parts of emotional intelligence. Yet we're also warned about rumination and analysis paralysis, where our thoughts trap us instead of setting us free. So which one is it? Is that mental replay button a tool for growth, or a self-sabotage switch? This confusion creates a unique stress. You might even feel a weird pride in your overanalysis, thinking it makes you more conscientious. You tell yourself, I'm just someone who feels things deeply, or I'm an empath, that's why I'm dissecting this. While that might be true, it's also possible you're justifying a habit that's draining your energy and fueling your anxiety. People with high emotional intelligence do reflect on their interactions, but the goal and the result are totally different from the looping anxiety of overthinking. One leads to insight and growth, the other leads to exhaustion. In this video, we're going to draw a clear line between these two things. We'll dismantle the myth that overanalyzing everything is a superpower. By the end, you'll know the crucial differences and have practical strategies to shift your brain from that frantic hamster wheel of overthinking to the productive path of real emotional intelligence. We're going to turn your mind from a courtroom where you're always on trial into a calm space for learning and self-understanding. Being caught in an overthinking loop? It's agonizing. It's like having a relentless detective in your brain who scrutinizes every word, every sigh, and every glance for hidden meanings and social missteps. Your brain can treat an awkward silence with the same threat level as a real danger. Why? Because, at a primal level, our brains are wired to see unresolved social situations as threats to our safety and belonging. And it's also profoundly isolating. You might be physically present with friends, but your mind, well, it's miles away. Still relitigating a comment you made an hour ago. This mental multitasking is exhausting. It drains your cognitive resources, leaving you feeling tired and irritable. It's no surprise that chronic overthinking is closely linked with anxiety and depression. That's because it keeps your system on high alert and fixated on negativity. The real tragedy is that overthinking masquerades as problem solving. You convince yourself that if you just think about it a little harder, you'll finally crack the code. But you never get a satisfying answer. Overthinking isn't about finding solutions. It's about ruminating on the problem until it feels impossibly large. This is the crucial distinction. Emotional intelligence uses emotional data to inform and guide. Overthinking, though, just gets completely drowned by it. An emotionally intelligent person might notice unease after a conversation and decide to seek clarity. An overthinker, on the other hand, will spin that same feeling into a dozen catastrophic what-if scenarios. This is the cycle we're here to break. So let's explore the 5 key differences that separate productive emotional intelligence from destructive overthinking. For each one, we'll give you a concrete strategy you can start using today. The first, most fundamental difference lies in what you do with your thoughts after an event. Emotionally intelligent people practice reflection. Overthinkers get trapped in rumination. On the surface, they look similar, but their function and outcomes, they're worlds apart. Now, reflection is a process of curious, constructive self-examination, driven by a desire to grow. When you reflect, you're like a scientist studying data. You look back on a situation and ask questions to learn something. Like, what was I feeling in that moment? What triggered it? And what could I do differently next time for a better outcome? Reflection has a purpose: to learn a lesson, gain insight, or make a plan. It's about processing an experience so you can let it go and move forward with new wisdom. You might not always like what you find, but it leaves you feeling clear and empowered because you now have information you can actually use. Rumination, on the other hand, is the cognitive equivalent of spinning your wheels in mud. The American Psychological Association describes it as excessive, repetitive thoughts that get in the way of everything else. Unlike reflection, rumination isn't driven by curiosity. It's driven by anxiety and self-blame. The questions aren't solution-oriented. Instead of, "What can I learn?" it's, "Why did I say that?" Or, "What if they hate me now?" There's no destination, just an endless replay of the event with an increasingly negative filter. Each time you replay the memory, you're just digging the emotional wound deeper. Rumination doesn't lead to solutions. No, it just leads to distress and paralysis. It's the difference between reviewing game footage to improve your strategy and watching a clip of your biggest mistake on a perpetual loop. So how do you pull yourself out of the mud of rumination? Well, here's a micro-strategy for you. Schedule a worry window. This cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT technique, is incredibly effective for breaking that 24/7 rumination cycle. Instead of letting worries run your day, you actually contain them. Here's how it works. First, pick a time and place. Choose a consistent, say, 15 to 30-minute window in your day to be your dedicated worry window. And try to avoid doing this right before bed, okay? Next, you'll postpone your worries. Throughout the day, when you catch yourself ruminating, consciously postpone it. Just tell yourself, "Hey, this is a thought from my worry window." It really helps to jot down the worry too. This way, you're acknowledging the thought without letting it completely suck you in. And finally, engage fully in the window. When your scheduled time arrives, go through your list. For each worry, you'll want to ask productive questions. Try separating them into two columns: things I can control and things I can't control. First, let's problem solve the controllable. For every worry in that "things I can control" column, brainstorm just one small, actionable step you can take. You're not solving the whole problem here. You're just identifying the very next step. For example, if you're worried about a comment you made, the next step might be drafting a clarifying text. This shifts you from passively worrying to actively problem-solving. Next, it's about letting go of the uncontrollable. For worries in the "things I can't control" column, like what someone else thinks of you, your job is to practice acceptance. Acknowledge the thought, recognize you have no control, and consciously let it go. You might even say out loud, "I release this worry." When that timer goes off, you stop. Over time, this practice trains your brain that there's a time and place for tough thoughts. It transforms a draining habit into a structured, productive practice. You stop being a victim of your thoughts, and you start becoming the manager of them. This brings us to the critical distinction between genuine empathy and psychological projection. Both involve interpreting other people's feelings, but one builds connection while the other creates misunderstanding. Empathy, a cornerstone of emotional intelligence, is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. It's about stepping outside yourself to genuinely consider their experience. A truly empathetic person doesn't just guess, they listen, pay attention to nonverbal cues, and ask questions. They separate their own feelings from the situation to make space for the other person's reality. If a friend is upset about something you think is trivial, empathy is saying, "That sounds really frustrating," validating their feelings even if you don't share them. It's an act of compassion. Projection is the opposite. It's a defense mechanism where you unconsciously take your own unacceptable feelings or insecurities and you attribute them to someone else. It's not about understanding them, it's about using them as, a screen for your own internal drama. For example, if you feel insecure about your work, you might project that onto your boss and become convinced they're constantly judging you, even with no evidence. Projection, you see, is a way for our ego to protect itself from uncomfortable truths. This is where overthinking gets dangerous. When you replay a conversation, are you genuinely trying to understand the other person's perspective, like true empathy? Or are you searching for evidence to confirm your own fears, which really is projection? If your analysis always ends with you as the victim, well, there's a pretty good chance you're projecting. An overthinker, for instance, might analyze a friend's brief text and immediately think, "They're mad at me. They think I'm so annoying." An empathetic person, though, considers other possibilities, like, they might be busy, or maybe they're just not a big texter. Empathy, you see, it opens up possibilities. Projection? It just shuts them down into a single negative story, starring your insecurities. So how do you catch yourself projecting and choose empathy instead? Here's a micro-strategy. Practice the curiosity first rule. The antidote to projection is curiosity. Projection assumes while empathy asks. The curiosity first rule is a mental habit that stops your brain from jumping to negative conclusions. It's a conscious pivot from assumption to inquiry. First, notice the narrative. The moment you find yourself creating a negative story about what someone else is thinking, just pause. Recognize it for what it is, a hypothesis, not a fact. For instance, the thought, "My boss thinks my presentation was terrible," is likely a projection of your own fear. Next, activate curiosity. Instead of accepting that story as truth, get curious. Ask yourself, what else could be true? Then, brainstorm at least 3 alternative explanations. For example, imagine your friend seems quiet on a call. A projection might be, "They're annoyed with me," but curiosity would lead you to think, 1. Maybe they had a stressful day. 2. Maybe they're just distracted. Or 3. Maybe they're feeling down about something completely unrelated to you. And finally, look for data, not drama. Distinguish between what you know, that's your data, and what you fear, that's the drama. Data could be, "My friend used short sentences." Drama would be, "My friend hates me." Always stick to the neutral data. The drama? That's just a projection. Ask, don't assume. If it feels right, check in. This isn't a confrontation, no. It's an expression of care. Instead of asking, "Are you mad at me?" which, let's be honest, often just centers your own anxiety. Try saying, "Hey, I noticed you seem a little quiet. Is everything okay, see?" That's open, and it really centers the recent experience. With repetition, you'll train your mind to pause before it projects, before it makes those assumptions. You'll learn to replace the anxiety of assumption with the calm of curiosity. You'll move from the prison of overthinking right into the world of emotional intelligence. Our third divide gets to the purpose of your thinking. Are you aiming for a solution, or are you just drowning in the problem? An emotionally intelligent mind, well, it uses analysis to build a bridge out of a problem. An overthinking mind, though, it uses analysis to build a house inside it. A solution-focused mindset, you see, that's a hallmark of emotional intelligence. It doesn't ignore problems, no, but after acknowledging the difficulty, it pivots. The key question for a solution-focused thinker is always, what's next? This mindset, it's all about action and agency. Emotionally intelligent people know that while they can't always control the problem, they can control their response. They break the problem down, brainstorm actions, and really focus their energy on what they can change. And this is empowering. It generates momentum. Now, problem saturation? That's the home turf of the overthinker. This is when you're so immersed in the negative aspects of a situation that you just can't see anything else. Your mental energy? It's dedicated to dissecting what went wrong. So instead of what can I do, you're trapped in a loop of why did this happen to me? You aren't just thinking about the problem, oh no, you're actually marinating in it. This state, it often feels pretty hopeless and powerless. When you're problem saturated, the problem just becomes your entire reality. It's a mental habit that keeps you stuck, like being in a hole. And instead of looking for a ladder, you just keep digging. How do you stop digging and start climbing? Here's a micro strategy for you. It's called the what's the next smallest step technique. When you're saturated by a problem, solving, it just feels overwhelming, doesn't it? The key here is to radically shrink your focus. Forget the whole ladder, just find the very next rung. This technique, it really breaks the spell of overwhelm. So first, let's just acknowledge the saturation. Just be aware, maybe even say to yourself, my mind is stuck. Naming it, you'll find, really helps create some distance. Next, externalize your thoughts. Grab a pen and paper. On one side, list out what you're calling your problem saturation thoughts, and on the other, just title it Next Smallest Step. Take about 5 minutes to just dump all those saturated thoughts. This really helps clear your mental cache, Then, it's time to ask the magic question. For now, ignore that problem list. Look at the blank space you left on the right and ask yourself this. What is one tiny physical action I could take in the next 10 minutes that would move me 1% closer to a solution? The key words there are tiny, physical, and 1%. Overwhelmed by a massive project? Well, the next step isn't finish project. It might be open a new document and write a title. Or feeling saturated with worry about a tough conversation? The next step isn't have the conversation. It could be write down 3 bullet points of what I want to say. Maybe you're paralyzed by financial stress? The step isn't fix my finances. It could simply be look up the phone number for my bank. Now for the important part, do it immediately. As soon as you identify that tiny step, just do it. The whole point is to use immediate action to break that mental paralysis. This small win creates momentum, making the next small step even easier. This strategy bypasses the part of your brain that wants to analyze everything and engages the part that can simply do. By focusing on a 1% improvement, you make progress that is almost imperceptible to your anxiety, yet completely real. Our fourth divide. It's that razor-thin line between healthy self-awareness and toxic self-criticism. Many overthinkers, they believe they're being highly self-aware when they're actually engaging in a relentless campaign of self-attack. Self-awareness is the core of emotional intelligence. It's the ability to see yourself clearly and objectively, your emotions, strengths, and weaknesses, without judgment. Self-awareness is like having a clean mirror. You see a smudge on your face and just note, there's a smudge, then wipe it off. A self-aware person can recognize, I'm feeling anxious right now, or I notice I got defensive. This observation, it's just data, providing valuable information to manage emotions and improve behavior. The goal is clarity and growth. Now, self-criticism, that's when that mirror becomes a funhouse mirror, magnifying every flaw. It's not neutral observation. No, it's harsh, relentless judgment. A self-aware thought is, I made a mistake on that report. A self-critical thought is, I'm so stupid. I am a mistake. See the difference? One is about a behavior. The other is a damning verdict on your identity. Overthinking is often a delivery system for self-criticism. The inner critic tells you this harshness is necessary for improvement, But psychologists find that persistent self-criticism doesn't motivate. Instead, it paralyzes us, leading to anxiety and a fear of failure. So how do you fire your inner critic and hire an inner coach instead? Let's talk about a micro strategy, the speak to yourself like a friend exercise. This strategy, which is central to the work of Dr. Kristen Neff on self-compassion, it actually retrains your brain, moving you from self-criticism to self-kindness. Here's how it works. First, you need to catch the critic. The next time you hear that harsh, judgmental inner voice, just pause. Notice it. You can even say to yourself, there's my inner critic again. Then second, acknowledge the pain. You see, underneath all that criticism, there's usually pain, maybe disappointment or shame. Acknowledge that feeling. Simply saying, "This hurts," without any judgment. Well, that's a powerful form of self-kindness. All right, third, let's try invoking the friend perspective. Imagine for a moment your best friend came to you with this exact problem. What would you honestly say to them? What would your tone be like? You certainly wouldn't call them stupid or a failure, would you? No, you'd likely say, "Hey, it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. This doesn't define you." And fourth, turn that compassion inward. Now take the exact words and tone you just offered your friend and, direct them toward yourself. So for example, instead of thinking "I'm such an idiot," tell yourself what you'd say to your friend. "You made a mistake, and that's human. It's okay." Or instead of "they all think I'm a fool," say, "Hey, I get why you're embarrassed, but this one moment, it truly doesn't erase all your good qualities." Now, this will probably feel a little awkward at first. You're really building a new mental muscle here. The voice of self-criticism, it's had years of practice, right? But every single time you consciously make this shift, you're actually rewiring your brain. You're teaching yourself that your worth, it isn't conditional on your performance. And this is the foundation of true self-awareness, one that's held in kindness, not judgment. And that brings us to our final divide. Does your thinking lead to decisiveness and action, or to paralysis and stagnation? Emotionally intelligent people use their thoughts and feelings as data to make effective decisions. They know that the point of analyzing a situation is to make a better choice. They balance emotional input and logical reasoning to make a choice and commit to it. They know that making a good decision and moving forward is usually better than waiting forever for a perfect decision that may never come. The overthinker, however, is a master of analysis paralysis. This is the state where overanalyzing makes it impossible to move. The overthinker is so terrified of making the wrong choice that they make no choice at all. They're lost in what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. This is often driven by perfectionism, the belief that there's one perfect solution and anything less is a catastrophe. This quest for certainty is a trap that keeps you stuck in indecision, destroying your confidence in your own judgment. How do you break free from paralysis and act with more confidence? Today we're looking at a micro-strategy, the two-way door and good enough principles. This strategy combines two mental models to dramatically lower the stakes of decision-making. First, let's identify the door type, a model from Jeff Bezos himself. Jeff Bezos sorts decisions into two main types: one-way doors and two-way doors. Okay, so one-way doors are monumental, irreversible decisions. Things like quitting a stable career to start a business. These definitely deserve slow, careful analysis. Then we have two-way doors. These are reversible. You can walk through, and if you don't like it, you can walk right back out with minimal damage. And here's the thing. Most of our decisions, over 90%, are actually two-way doors. The overthinker's mistake, you see, is treating every single decision like a one-way door. So your first step is to ask yourself, is this a one-way or a two-way door? The moment you identify a decision as a two-way door, you instantly give yourself permission to lower the pressure. Right. For part 2, we're going to apply the good enough principle. It's also known as the satisficers model. Once you know you're facing a two-way door, that's when you apply the good enough principle, also known as satisficing. This strategy, coined by Nobel laureate Herbert Simon, aims for a asterisk satisfactory result rather than the asterisk optimal one. Now there are two types. First, you have maximizers. They need to be sure every decision is the asterisk's absolute best choice and, well, that's often the overthinker's mindset, right? Then there are satisficers. They have a set of core criteria, and once they find an option that times meets those, they just choose it and move on. And research shows satisficers are actually happier and more satisfied with their choices. So here's how to apply this. For any two-way door decision, define 2 or 3 essential good enough criteria right up front. Then, you just look for the asterisk first option that meets them, choose it, and move on. Let's apply this to planning a weekend trip. First, let's look at the paralysis or maximizer approach. You spend weeks researching dozens of destinations and hundreds of hotels. You're making spreadsheets and worrying you'll miss the perfect spot. And you know what? You're paralyzed. Now, for the decisive or satisficer approach. First, you identify the door. For a weekend trip, that's a classic two-way door. Next, you define good enough. Say, 1. Within a 3-hour drive. 2. It has a nice place to hike. And 3. The hotel is under $200 a night. Then, you find the first match. You do a quick search and find a town 2.5 hours away with a state park and a hotel for $180. Finally, you decide. You book it. You stop researching. It's good enough. And by combining these principles, you create a system for action. You save your deep analysis for the few true one-way doors, and you give yourself permission to be quick and decisive for the rest. We've journeyed through the confusing territory between emotional intelligence and overthinking, mapping out the 5 critical distinctions that can lead you out of the fog. To recap, we distinguished between productive reflection versus destructive rumination, genuine empathy versus anxious projection, forward-moving solution focus versus stagnant problem saturation, clear self-awareness versus harsh self-criticism, and confident decisiveness versus crippling analysis paralysis. The theme is clear. Emotional intelligence is about using your thoughts and feelings as tools for growth. Overthinking is when your thoughts and feelings use you. But the most important takeaway is that you're not powerless. Your thought patterns are habits, and habits can be changed by using the micro-strategies we've discussed. Things like the worry window, the curiosity first rule, asking, what's the next smallest step? Speaking to yourself like a friend, and using the two-way door principle, you're actively rewiring your brain. Now, this isn't about perfection. There'll be days when the overthinking spiral feels strong. But now, you have a map and a toolkit. The goal isn't to never have an anxious thought again. The goal is to stop letting that thought become the narrator of your life. It's about taking back control, one choice at a time. Which of these 5 distinctions resonated with you the most? Was it reflection versus rumination? Or did the idea of empathy versus projection really hit home? Let me know in the comments below. You know, sharing your experience, it helps you, and it just might make someone else feel a little less alone. And hey, if you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button. And subscribe for more content on building your emotional intelligence. Thank you for investing this time in yourself.